Governments have been using a range of Orwellian mind control tricks during the coronavirus crisis. The slogans, the clapping and the symbols have been carefully used to enable the authorities to take control of our thinking. I'm grateful to Dr. Coleman, a former NHS doctor and eminent hypnotherapist who's the author of the book Practical Hypnotherapy, for pointing out to me just how our minds have been taken over and how we've been very successfully and skillfully manipulated into believing the lies we've been fed. Elected governments, aided by specialist behavioural scientists, have been brainwashing millions into accepting the coronavirus propaganda. The mind is a wonderful thing. It responds in sometimes unpredictable ways. So, for example, if you see a headline which says, "Boris Johnson is an alien," then most people will probably dismiss it as quite silly nonsense. But if the headline says, "Is Boris Johnson an alien?" readers will be more likely to suspect that the British Prime Minister might indeed be from another planet. And research shows that if people see a headline which says, "Boris Johnson is not an alien," then their suspicions will be raised still higher. Manipulating and tricking the mind is a professional business, and we've been brainwashed, and the brainwashing has been very subtle. We've all been quietly hypnotized and indoctrinated to accept the new mass hysteria generated by governments everywhere. Many people now enjoy the lockdown and they don't want it to end. It enables them to avoid responsibility for their own lives. Do you remember who said, open quotes, "Through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell and also the other way round, to consider the most wretched life as paradise"? Well, it was Adolf Hitler, who was a master at mass manipulation and the use of subliminal techniques, and it was Hitler who also commented that it was a good fortune for governments that the mass of people do not think. The Nazis were very good at controlling people's minds. Goebbels once said that if you repeat a lie often enough, then people will believe it. He also pointed out that if you want to control a population and you have to deal with an opposition, then you should accuse the other side of the sin or the trickery which you yourself are using. So governments everywhere have been accusing those who are telling the truth of spreading fake news. Anyone who doesn't toe the party line is monstered and dismissed as a dangerous conspiracy theorist, though the big conspiracies have actually all been coming from governments. Countries around the world have been promoting slogans to persuade their citizens to behave as required. In China there was a slogan which said, "If you love your parents, lock them up." In Taiwan, people were told to visit each other is to kill each other. At first glance, the slogans which are heavily advertised and promoted in the UK seem harmless enough. We all recognise them. Some, such as "We're all in this together," seem fairly innocuous, though we perhaps might be forgiven for adding the rider that we're all in this together, unless we happen to work as advisors to the Prime Minister. The first trio of phrases which were promoted everywhere in the UK were "Keep your distance," "Wash your hands," "Think of others." More recently, new phrases have been added to the repertoire: "Stay home," "Save lives," "Protect the NHS." The rhythm and pattern used in these phrases is not a coincidence. There are usually 3 words in each phrase, and the phrases run in threes. This isn't a coincidence, it isn't happen chance. Using phrases of 3 words presented in groups of 3 is a technique known as the rule of 3 in psychological conditioning. And that's the reason for the 3 phrases with which we're all being bombarded. We're being trained and taught at the same time. It's behavioural psychology. Other hypnotherapists have pointed out that if we repeat phrases often enough, then the words and thoughts become implanted in our subconscious minds and then become a belief which motivates our behaviour. And so governments repeat slogans which become beliefs. It's called auto-suggestion, along the lines of "every day in every way I'm getting better and better." Hitler was also a believer that if a lie was repeated often enough, it would eventually be confused with the truth by the greater part of the population. People more readily fall victim to the big lie than the small lie, said Hitler, since it would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Hitler used these techniques to control and manipulate the German people and to persuade them to accept the evil things he wanted them to do. George Orwell, who invented Newspeak, also understood the importance of the triple three-word phrase. In 1984, his futuristic novel, which was written in 1948, Orwell invented the slogan, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." If you want a picture of the future, wrote Orwell, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Power, he reminded us, is not a means, it is an end. Everything else that's been happening since February 2020 is part of the brainwashing process. And it's been noticeable that the instructions we've been given have been more like orders. The signs that have popped up like dandelions say, "Stand here," not "Please stand here." And why not? You don't say please to prisoners, do you? And then there are the weeks of clapping for carers and medical staff. Clapping, which probably started innocently and with good intentions, I'm sure it did, covers up the paradox, the quiet, insistent terror that comes from knowing that for all practical purposes there's no healthcare, and we've been betrayed by politicians and bureaucrats who decided to devote entire healthcare programs to caring for a relatively small number of patients who have, or might be thought to have, or be susceptible to, the flu-like virus. Dr. Milton Erickson, an eminent hypnotherapist, used to give his patients simple tasks to do. He would send them home to clean the attic or to count the number of books they owned. All this was done as part of the process of mind control. Telling people to stand on their doorsteps at 8 p.m. on Thursdays and to clap is a simple repetitive task which is part of the mass hypnosis. The clapping may have started out innocently, but it was quickly and enthusiastically promoted by the people who want to influence our lives. Persuading people to do what you want them to do is part of the hypnotherapy process. Getting people to clap was also important in that it made people believe in the danger of the coronavirus and the bravery of those working in healthcare. It helped people accept the fact that there were no beds available for patients with cancer or any other serious disorder. The rainbow, which has suddenly started to appear everywhere, is another part of the brainwashing process. Thousands have been so successfully brainwashed that they willingly take part in promoting the symbols and the slogans. Even the confusing rules about who we can and cannot see were part of the programme. A minister recently told Britons that two people could meet one person, now that the lockdown rules are being slightly adapted. Or rather, this was only in England, because Wales and Scotland have gone their own way. Told Britain's English people that two people could meet one person, but that one person could not meet two people. It's so complicated and stupid that it's obvious contradictory nonsense, but it was nevertheless put forward as government policy. The fact is that if you confuse and bewilder at the same time that you're frightening people, then you unsettle them and you create an anxious and obedient population. And that's what's been going on for weeks. Bearing all this in mind, I've prepared my own triple-phrased slogan. 3 words and 3 phrases. Distrust the government, avoid mass media, fight the lies. My slogans fit the brainwashing requirement perfectly. Simple, effective, honest. I suspect that the government won't be using my slogans in its advertising, so try to remember them. Distrust the government, avoid mass media, fight the lies. Thank you for watching an old man in a chair, and thanks for all your support. This video has not been monetized, and I've not authorized any advertising or any sponsorship. You can find more truths about the coronavirus and all sorts of other topics on my website, which also doesn't carry any advertising and has no sponsorship. Please subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos, because they aren't always easy to find, and please pass on and share to spread the truth as widely as possible. Thank you very much for watching.